Girls, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my relationship coach, Lisa Marini.
Hello.
And we just had a really powerful conversation, a very authentic, vulnerable conversation, and a lot of thrashing going on. And what I mean by thrashing is like, well, maybe you're doing this. I'm like, no, here's the reason why I'm doing this. And the conversation was just stirring from the get-go, which is where we wanted to go. And through that process, um, the stubborn aspect of me that wants to, explain or justify my fronts and why I operate the way I do, there's another voice that starts to show up, a possibility that is willing to look at like, how am I creating and generating my reality? I have all these incredible disciplines in my life, and some of them haven't been in relationship. And we talked about how to, if you have all these disciplines with your food or your exercise or your business, and you have these standards of excellence, how can one take that same intelligence and apply that to, well, for me, I'm entering back into the dating world again. And how would that look in my, I guess, in my vetting process and how I'm showing up? And I think there's a lot of really great wisdom drawn from today's conversation. And I love that we like pushed and pulled and rubbed on all those edges and old wounds. I think it brought up a lot of really great stuff for me. I got some homework, as you noticed. I was taking lots of notes today, but maybe sharing a few things today, Lisa, with the gang that's listening, that might be really potent in their life, might speak some real truth for them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Glenn. And thank you for your vulnerability and going there with me. I know sometimes I give a little tough love, but there's having that space to push up against, I think really does create, some introspection or things that maybe you do feel like you have to justify, but you don't have to justify anything. There's just an awareness to it. One of the things that we touched on today is that really great accountability that we hold for ourselves when it's just us. It's really easy to, know what our food looks like. And if we fall off eating something great, we can get ourselves back on track with exercise, any of these routines we have. When it comes to relationship, it's different. You're bringing another person into that equation, and it's a lot easier to succumb to, bad diet choices or later bedtimes. And having a structure in place prior to doing those things. How are you going to hold yourself accountable? What is the question that you ask yourself to bring yourself back to your own awareness, your own space? And what we discussed is, are you being authentic right now? Are you honoring yourself, and are you truly being yourself? And if you find that, wow, we've been partying every night and drinking a lot of alcohol, and gosh, you're not treating me the way that I really wish to be treated, or I find myself wavering and needing to make sure your needs are met before mine, that's not authentic. So kind of having a plan of how you're going to check back in with yourself, no different than you would with any of your other, structures that you have in place for life, but making sure you're doing the same in relationship.
Yeah, it's a practice to check in with yourself, to hit pause and let me just check in and see what's occurring for myself. And then the next hard step is actually, how do I make those healthy requests versus complaints?
Mhm.
Often people complain about things versus there's a hidden request there. And so it's being curious about yourself. And then it's also being curious about the person that you're, potentially in relationship with.
Yeah.
So I found today's conversation got a little edgy when we got into some aspects of, why I do what I do, and what's possible if I didn't have to have that story anymore, and if I didn't have to have that. I like to use the term like governor on there. That's like, that's
Mhm.
where we're at. We're kept at. Meaning, we came and entered in this conversation, and the governor was that here's when I'm ready for certain things, and is that under the story that timeline is justifiable and makes sense. Um, but if I withdrew myself from that story, what would be possible now.
Yeah.
And that I find that with myself not and with clients that that's usually the issue. Someone comes to coach, wants to work with someone, and they're like, I want to get from here to here. But as you're helping me, I'm going to put a buffer in here that just like says, not yet.
Yeah.
And maybe speaking a little bit to that, just that what's going on in between the ears, and what that conversation, that dialogue that's saying like, I want to go from here to here. Um, and here's why we can't just yet.
Yeah. Well, and it's very insightful. And I think we all have stories, right? Humans by nature are meaning making machines. If we didn't have a story, we'd be robots. Stories are what give meaning to our life. They give us, interesting things to discuss. They evoke feelings and emotions. So stories are important. The problem is when the story isn't actually true. And if we can sit down and analyze the story and actually maybe even write down what is factual about it, what is actual factual truth, where if you stood in front of a judge and jury and stated the facts about it versus the story you're making up about it, you can see there is an abundance of opportunity or new story that you can create. So one option is to do that, and then to tell your woe is me story, or why you can't, or my past, childhood or my life has made me be X, Y, and Z. And then write the opposite of that story. Flip it over and write that narrative. And when you're done with that, realizing you have a choice. Both stories could be equally as valid, right? The negative woe is me story or the positive success story. It's your investment. What are you investing in? What are you choosing to believe? Because neither of them are actually totally true, right? They're stories. And so we have such autonomy to choose the way we want to view the world.
I love that step of just taking your story, and as if you're pulling it in front of your own judge and jury, and you extrapolate, you pull out the facts, because that's what we're going to work off. And then all of a sudden it loses that, that emotional context and that weight. So it's kind of Star Trek fans, you brought it down to Spock level, the logic of like, okay, here are the facts. And then if these are the facts, now I can tell all kinds of stories. What's the best one to tell?
Yeah.
That will take me to the next destination. And I think that's what we need to do when it comes to, I found with clients when they're trying to pull the trigger on a big decision, they're struggling with that old story. And if they can just pull the facts out and they can create the story they want to live into and breathe life into, it quickly brings you to a new starting point.
Absolutely. And we do this all the time in relationships. Think about, you've been in a relationship for a year, and if you declared or made a statement, wow, this is the worst partner I've ever had, you're going to look back at that last year and you're going to cherry pick every instance to support your statement. This is what they did on Friday. This is what they did last month. And you're going to pick every instance to support they're the worst partner ever. Yeah. But what if then you made the statement they're the best partner ever? And then you go back and you're going to cherry pick all of those instances where they were the best. Well, the documentary is very different, right? It's a combination of both. We don't often see the documentary. So it's really, mindful to be aware of what your story is and how it's going in relationship.
And is it serving you well? And are you going to continue to create, as most people do, they here I go again.
Yeah,
here I am going again this way, and the way I show up in relationship and project, this experience. So like, I love how you put it, the documentary. It's like, what kind of documentary do you want to tell?
For sure.
What's the one's going to serve you best from this standpoint of this new level of awareness. So, for me, for my clients, and I'm sure with your clients, it's like awakening from the story to the present moment, pulling the facts, and then feeling a sense of new choice again. I'm back in the driver's seat again. I'm like, oh, I'm not in the back of this bus. I'm sitting in a fancy sport car, and I got the emergency brake up. It's like, where do we want to go now? Like, let's put that brake down and let's choose an inspiring destination and then get back to focus. I love what you've brought today in this conversation, which is how to take these skills that are being applied clearly, in other categories of one's life. We all are doing this. And if we can take that method, that formula, that intelligence, and apply that to the category where we're not getting the great results, and ask ourselves, am I applying a method, or am I just kind of reckless? Am I just hoping, versus bringing, like, we've all got some incredible skills and tools. We've learned to have made it thus far. We've got these within us, and it's just only, everything is a remembering of
Yes.
what's here and waiting to be called forth. So I just want to thank you again, Lisa, for your time today, and I appreciate everybody listening in. Hopefully you got some value from today's conversation, but always a beautiful and wild experience of challenge, and then just an amplification of what's possible. So
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
All right.
Okay, see everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.